Often we're reading articles to you. We find what we think is a relevant article for the time. Today, it's nice to bring videos every now and then. Not that I don't want to hear you talk, Joe, and read our article, but this one is Coldwell Banker CEO discussing what we face every day, what we assume a lot of agents face every day, and that is, prepping and preparing for a sale, repairs, improvements, both on the sell side as well as on the buy side, and how to navigate all that, how people are navigating it these days. And if you do it right, it makes the entire process and the experience better for everyone.
Well, here, let me, of course, technical difficulties. Hold on, guys. Let's see. Let's share the screen here.
I'll say in addition to that, he talks a little bit about market summary and what's going on. And, are we in a bubble? I think the question you get in almost every interview related to real estate these days. So it's great. It's nice to hear it continually addressed and to see if there's different takes, different perceptions on it.
Okay. I think we're good.
Okay.
Let me just try one more time to be sure.
There are three certainties in this life: death, taxes, and avocado green kitchens will never be in style. There's my reference for the 1970s. Why do I bring it up? Because if you're trying to sell a home or looking for a home, it's about renovations right now. Let's bring in Ryan Gorman, Coldwell Banker CEO, because Renovation Nation is here. And you folk did a survey to find out what it means for people to renovate, especially Gen Zs and millennials. What can you tell us? Do they do this on their own, or are they looking for some help?
Definitely looking for help. Thank you for having me to talk a little bit about this. Renovation Nation sounds about right. Approximately 90% of all home sellers make some repairs and renovations ahead of selling, which is not particularly a surprise. But we also found that approximately 40% of those have to make new repairs and new renovations post-inspection. So what we hear constantly is what they are looking for is some help. The three biggest pain points: what to do it intelligently, how to get someone to do it right now in a constrained labor market, and then how to pay for it. Especially that millennial generation, about 60% of the time they struggle to pay for it, which is why Coldmaker created the Revitalize program with Angie to be able to solve those problems and be able to put something in place where they can get everything taken care of for them, from logistics to financials, and just pay for it at closing.
All right, speaking of how to pay for things, you just got a reading out this morning, the median U.S. home price hitting a record high, $363,300 in June. That's up 23% from just a year ago. We've seen this trend continue to the upside. I guess, how much higher do you see prices going in the near term?
Well, I think it continues to be about supply and demand. So we continue to see buyer demand outstripping seller supply. I think it's something like 120 or 112 months in a row that we've seen these price increases. You'll start to see some noise in the year-over-year numbers with volume, but with price, you're seeing that supply-demand focus, and it continues. With NAR's more anecdotal reporting, they're starting to see that maybe a newly listed home got 15 offers in 15 minutes a few months ago, and now maybe it's 5 or 6 days for 5 or 6 offers. That's still a very robust seller's market, but perhaps with a little bit of buyer frustration and maybe a little buyer vacation coming into the mix here as people get out and fill our national parks and hotels.
When you talk about renovation and this deal you've got going with Angie to help people get things renovated, because everyone thinks they're an expert with real estate when they're not. So where should you be renovating? The bathroom, the kitchen, which is it?
Well, so there's a good match between what people anticipate and what is actually needed when it comes to the light renovations, which is painting. About half the time people think they should freshen up. That's exactly what they should do. But there's also a heavy lean into things that might be personally preferable for folks, when really that's not necessarily what buyers are looking for. Especially that millennial generation is looking for move-in ready. They care the most about that kitchen, and secondary is that bathroom space. What people don't anticipate as much is very high on the list of those who are looking to buy is making sure the HVAC systems, electrical, and plumbing is done well. Almost no sellers are really focused in that area, but buyers are. They want to make sure they move into a home that they don't have to do anything new to. So that's what your Cold Banker agent's going to tell you for sure, and that's certainly what we found in our survey of what buyers really want.
Right, in terms of some of the trends that you're seeing nationwide, what are some of the hottest regions right now for sellers, or if people are out there watching this thinking about putting their house on the market? What are the places that buyers are most likely seeking right now?
The strength is nearly universal, which in my career in housing, I've almost never seen before. But we're seeing strength everywhere from New York City to New Orleans, so really across the board. But the absolute strongest markets, I would say, continue to be those really attractive weather and tax destination areas, right? Where the weather's a little more mild and where the tax climate is a little more favorable. So you certainly see that in areas like Florida and Texas, the Carolinas, and Tennessee.
Do you worry that these prices getting out of hand might be the foreshadow of a bubble, or all steam ahead?
Typically, when we worry about a bubble, what we're looking for is things like speculation or loose lending standards. We're not seeing any of that today. We're really seeing fundamental demand. Those who are looking to sell are doing so because they want to upgrade. That's the most common, more space, more amenities, or be closer to family. So really the seller and buyer demand is still pretty fundamental. We're not seeing any of those concerns. What I do think we're going to see is that price increase coming up here in the near term, likely into pulling more inventory onto the market. We saw inventory rise just a little, about 3.3% month over month, and we saw 2.6 up from 2.5 months of inventory on the market. I think you're starting to see people realize the value of their home and realize the best thing for them might be to sell today or in the near term and move down the road. So I think you're going to see inventory come on to abate a little bit of the pressure to come closer to meeting some of the demand, which I think will remain strong.
Brian, we also have investment firms like BlackRock's one of them coming in and scooping up these houses, obviously driving their prices higher. I guess to what extent are these investment firms driving prices? Because I think people are trying to figure out just how big of a role they play in residential housing.
There are certainly pockets where it's a larger percentage than others, but for most of the country, you're looking at sort of single-digit percentage of purchases. You've seen some reports out there that pretend that it's maybe a larger percentage, but they're oftentimes counting second home purchases or really anywhere where someone doesn't live in the property that they're selling from a tax address standpoint. So it's still a smaller piece of the market. But I want to say the single family rental market has historically been somewhat underserved. It's always been a mom and pop business. It'll continue to be over 12 million mom and pop units held out there renting. But some of these institutional buyers are kind of upgrading some of that inventory. So those who want to rent a single family home rather than an apartment are getting some higher quality inventory. So I think it's creating a little pressure, but also a little benefit.
All right. Well, that was a diplomatic answer. Good for Ryan Gorman.
Good 5-6 minute segment there. I think touched on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Including things that we, characterize in identical ways that we characterize them. Volume still moving, supply demand. It's still a seller's market, but rather than 15, it's 5 offers, and rather than 15 minutes, it might be 5 days. So it's still tough for buyers, still positive for sellers. But I will say this from a seller perspective. If it's 5 rather than 15, it does matter, right? But if you do it right, out of those 5, you'll get the number you need. 15 can just push it forward a little more from activity and excitement. When it gets down to 5 and less, it becomes more important to do it right and prep the home, which is where he started with renovation.
Right.
I love the fact that he homed in on exactly what we do. And that was fantastic, right? That's why we chose this one to listen to. Right. He basically said buyers are looking for a home where they don't have to do anything. And in evaluating homes and prepping homes and advising, we're basically doing a pre-inspection. We're adding value where we can. It's always maximizing the return of the investment that you make. And for sure, not leaving broken things, but things that buyers can choose to upgrade over time, but nothing required when they first purchase. And that's great. It's great to hear that, and we know this because we're doing it and we're getting positive responses when we're out there in the process, but it's great to hear a CEO of a major company like that reiterate it and articulate it in that way, because that's always been our approach.
The one number I thought was off, at least according to our market, was that 40% of buyers, I think that number's higher, at least where we live, where we are.
40%
from the buyer's side in terms of improving a home once they purchased it.
Right. Well, he did say that it's not only a combination of improvements, it's repairs and improvements, personal choices. The other thing that struck me there was, from a seller perspective, stepping back and not personalizing the choices of improvements to prep for sale is super important.
Yeah.
I think often our approach to doing it is neutral, trendy enough, attractive enough, with the least amount invested because you're getting ready to sell.
Yeah.
And it's not personal. They're not going to have to live with it going forward, and the house will sell. So that's a relevant point.
Well, that's the ironic thing of this all, isn't it? Huh? The seller's trying to make it attractive to sell. The buyer purchases a property and might get rid of some things that seller thought was going to work. And I guess it did, but
We have that discussion, Joe, and we, it's common for us to do the $5,000 to $20,000 remodel, somewhere in that range. And we know look, somebody can spend $50,000 on their kitchen alone, right? We're not doing that. We're prepping it and getting it ready and increasing the volume of potential buyers. And it's strange, but yes, sometimes we remodel things and they come right in and gut them and put in new things. And it feels really off. It doesn't always happen. But it has definitely helped increase the price,
exactly.
increase the pool of buyers, and it's
did its
done
job.
what it was supposed to do.
Exactly.
In a more efficient way, in a quicker way, with less cash, all the above. Yeah.
So, he basically stacked it as 3 challenges, right? The first one being how to plan it, this renovation, how to execute it, and then, of course, how to pay for it. So just in the context of how we do things, what are our answers to that?
Planning it is, whether buyer or seller, we're laying it out. We're evaluating it from an inspection perspective as well as a cosmetic. And this is like a very exciting thing for me about real estate is form and function and how people live in a space and, how it feels based on volume of light. And, it's so important. I love having those conversations. So that's how to plan it, both from prepping for sale and how it'll be perceived, but also how a buyer will live in a space. How to execute it is, what it takes to get there. I'll give you an example. We never have to often don't have to go back very far. We have a client who bought a place, did a few improvements, and now they're pregnant, talking about wanting to get a kitchen remodel done before the baby comes. Makes sense. Really hard to remodel inside a house when you have a baby there. They went out and got estimates. Their estimates were 29 and I think ballpark in the 40s. We're coming in half of that 29. And it's not always half, but we give options. We explain why we think it's 29. Sometimes it's just more profit. Sometimes it's choices and finding alternative choices that can work and are effective, and it works for them at a lower price, but gets a good enough result. So, remodeling, as you say often, Joe, that's a big part of our business and our engagement. We're selling homes, and we know and understand a house and the structure and the feel you want to get and how to maximize that and do it in an efficient way.
So we talked about that. We talked about execution, and then how to pay for this. I know through our kind of blanket, what we call home profit plan, we have a couple scenarios, but how would you answer that?
It's always a case by case situation, and he talks about, I think potentially either limited cash flow or just a choice to utilize a service that is becoming a little more regular in the industry. It's interesting. It used to be a niche 10 years ago. I'd engage with a client, and it was a very short list of people who would consider engaging in remodeling, as well as helping finance and complete that remodeling. Now it's definitely more in the forefront, and there are more agents doing it, and more outside services available that help facilitate it. So there are ways to pay on the close if you're a seller, and always seeking opportunities. They're a little tighter and a little more narrow on the buy side, but there are options there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, always use urban hillsides, right? Is that what we're saying? No, this is a daunting thing. Not only are you buying a home or you're selling a home, but it's a little foggy what to do and where to go. And at the least, we ask you get an agent that goes beyond, I think, the stereotype. You need people that know about remodeling, styles, design, all those things. And it's a big value. So.